23. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes? Been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes from April 17th. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. We're down to item 4, Solicitor's Office appointment. Not all that one?
Come on up.
Good morning. Everybody here should know me, but I took a job in January, started in February with the Solicitor's Office as an investigator. And one of the questions that I kept getting asked is what I actually do over there. And I was hired as an investigator and technology tech. I don't know what that means, but basically what I've been doing is they'll give me a case coming up for trial, going through everything that's in the case, seeing if anything's missing. Done a couple of interviews for them with witnesses. And basically, they would have to explain this or back this up. But from the outside looking in, I see things from the law enforcement side that they really sometimes don't pick up from a prosecutor side. So basically with that, I'm making suggestions. Whether they use them or not is up to them. But it helps shut some of the doors on some of the questions that may arise when a trial or whatever comes up. Also, I've tracked down, I don't know, probably 50 witnesses so far. That one of them was a victim from a 2013 CSC case out of Darlington. And with the case being that old, don't ask me how it got that old, I don't know, but found her, one of the investigators had died, so we had to track down everybody else that was involved in that. We tracked them down from Fayetteville, North Carolina, all the way down the coast of Charleston, up into Greenville. That's basically what one of the main job duties I have there is trying to shore up some of these cases or help guide the case along. Probably about 5 weeks now, had a little bit of spare time, and my main office that I work out of is Darlington. It's set up to work out of Darlington 3 days a week, from here a day and a half, but there's so much going on over there, and believe it or not, we are very blessed that we don't have the violence that's on their docket in Darlington. But I had a little bit of free time, so I asked if they just print me the dockets from Chesterfield and Darlington, and took it on myself. Went through and I started calling the officers on the victimless crimes. That's your drug crimes, your driving charges, maybe weapons offenses, and said, hey, what do you want off of this case? And some of them went back to 2018, 2019. Was very shocked and pleasantly pleased at how very, very fair they were with what they were asking for out of the case. Some of them was time, prison time, some of them was probation. Some of them they asked if there's a treatment program for them to go into, that type of stuff. Compiled a list, sent it to Kennard, the attorneys in Chesterfield, because I wanted to do it there to show the need, and basically the reason I started in Chesterfield is I knew most of the officers over here would have that type of relationship. I didn't make suggestions, I just said, what do you want out of this case? They were able to take that list. Last week, I don't know, 45, maybe 50 defendants that they were able to get through court, and that's not an all process or dismisses. That was some type of plea or someone in prison, drug court, PTI, whatever the case is, but it wasn't us making that suggestion, it was the officer having that say-so in it. I can't tell you how many people that told me, but I've talked to probably 45 to 50 law enforcement officers from Chesterfield area when I was doing this, and just were appreciative, feeling like they had a say in what it was. The defense attorneys, I had two of them came up. I was in court a little bit last week, and they said this does make it a little easier because it gives them something to try to work for. My goal with this is this is 315 pages of the docket in Chesterfield. My long-term goal is to cut these numbers down, and then at some point before they make their initial appearances, and Kennard will have to explain that process, but that's when they first go to, I guess, meet with their attorney and the discussion starts about their case. My goal is to have this offered to some degree so they know what law enforcement's wanting, what they're trying to get out of the case, and try to streamline some of these so they don't sit there for 2, 3, 4 years. I've been asked, should this have been happening all along? Well, before I started there, I would have said yes. But being there, there's not the personnel to be able to do this, because when I say 5 weeks, this is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, calling guys that are were on night shift and trying to catch them when they first came on, and trying not to wake them up during the day. And some of them I would have to send a list and wait for it to come back. And you know, some of the departments wanted me to go through a supervisor instead of each individual officer for that. So it was a task that when I do Darlington's, I'll set it up a little bit different. It'll shave some of that time off. But last week, court had a funeral they had to go to and something else. They didn't get the full benefit, I guess is what I'm trying to say, of what she was trying to get through. I will say this, that the solicitor office, Sarah Campbell, Kennard, and Mary Thomas, as soon as this list went out, Kennard will have to explain this. When they get these cases, they get assigned to an attorney, okay? So it's not like a big lump that I take. Kennard takes what cases he gets assigned out. So they emailed out these offers. They asked them to include me on them. I probably got 60 to 70 different email texts or emails where they sent them out to not only the public defender's office but to paid attorneys, and was pretty surprised at some of the responses they got back on the positive end. We had these judicial committee meetings and all this, and is this the fix for it? No, I don't think it's the total fix, but I think it's one giant step in the right direction. There is no way whatsoever with everything else that I'm asked to do that I can keep up both counties for this. If wherever they send me to work, that's what I'm gonna go where they send me to do what I'm told. But somebody needs to be in East County, and at some point I'm gonna say that they need to do this in Marlboro and Dillon also. But to cut some of these numbers out of there, my hope is that it gives each attorney more time to focus on their trials and the more violent cases. After the first list, I started going back through and started going through with all the investigators. What do you want out of this case? That's your break-ins and anything that's really not to do with violence. I didn't touch robberies, any type of murder, shootings, assaults. I didn't touch any domestics. And was surprised at what they wanted, because most of them, and there was some that said they need to go to prison, and that whatever they said, that's what I put down. But most of them wanted the victim to get restitution and get something, guys ready, some type of conviction, which was very fair. That list hasn't come out yet because I just sent it yesterday. There was 4 different lists that I've done. All told, it came up to 571 defendants that I got some type of offer from law enforcement. Now, the docket's got 1,300 and something defendants on it. I think, I don't know, I mean, this is a guess. Hold on, let me tell you. 1,300 defendants, 3,060 cases. Will all of these 500 something defendants go through? No, there's gonna be some that's bench warrants that, are not gonna show up on because of their criminal element. There's some of these that, because of the time frame, has moved and have probably got no notification. Some of the deputies told me, I found 4 that were dead, that had died from the time they committed the crime until, found out the other day. And it's just trying to find a way to streamline this to where you don't have a case hopefully sitting on there for 3, 4, 5 years. There was even some cases that, from January and February of this year that showed up on the docket. I said, go ahead and tell me what you want on those, and I think they got rid of probably 4 or 5, maybe 10 of those defendants, right off the bat, which is what the goal is I'm trying to do. But there's a need for what I do here, just like in Darlington. I've been asked several times about would I do it here full time. No, and there's several reasons. If they tell me I'm gonna work here, I'll do it. But probably this time next year, I'll be moving to Hartsville. My grandkids are there, and my wife works over there, and my daughter's in college, and I don't see her coming back to Chesterfield, and just a bunch of personal reasons. That's probably what's in the cards for me and my wife. I don't care about the drive. That's probably the worst part of my job is the drive back and forth to Darlington. It's not a bad drive. I just feel like it's wasted time. But I've put a ton of time into this, and it's not just this. I had a program that Jessica asked me to go through and sort of revamp, rename some files in a system that they had. I work till it's done. But I keep saying or hearing that is there somebody that would take the initiative to do this? And I feel like if this is something that y'all see the benefit of, you need to lay out all of your expectations on whoever gets that position, so they know that's what, what's expected of. But there again, there's no way that I would be able to continue doing this. My fear now is this will probably take, I'll say 4 to 5 terms of court to get most of what the easy beat is off of this. But if it's something that does not continue, it's just a matter of time before it fills back up. And, we talk about ways to help the judicial system or where's the problem, what's the problem? Probably everybody's got a slight hand in the problem. My biggest fear when I did this is I had no idea. I could see the effort from the solicitor's office going out to make this work. I had no idea what the defense side was going to do. And so far what I've seen has been pretty receptive to it. It's some of them that came up, they were calling, solicitor was calling me saying, do you think law enforcement will agree to this or that? And they had a good reason for it. I said, I think they will, but you need to call and tell them so they know and understand that, just that communication part. You get into victims, somebody steals from Tim, Tim's gonna want blood. Is that reality though? In reality, that's not. And with these victim crimes that involve a victim, the thing is if you want a chance of getting sort of some of what you lost back, this is the 3 options that we have for that. And that's where law enforcement saw the sensible side of that, or the reality side of that. I've got the docket here, and I'll be glad to show any one of you, pass it around or whatever. It's all marked up of what I did. I did 4 lists. I'll have one final list hopefully this week, and I'll be finished with the Chesterfield docket. But also on the docket, and numbers are up there. I don't know what's good and what's bad. But what I also noticed, and I didn't realize this, is when somebody's on a pretrial intervention program, that still stays on the docket until they complete it. So your numbers there, on top of the 1,300 defendants, is 128, I think, that were on PTI, that number would come off. So the looking at the number on there, is really not you said, what's the number today? I just don't see it's like having a jail number. I got 87 in there. I didn't do this to try to take numbers off of the jail. Looking at this docket, I had no idea whether they're in jail or out on bond. It's just trying to reduce this to where I had something to work with, or if somebody's there, has something to work with to go forward to try to take that next step. But I think that the biggest thing I've seen, and I wasn't here for initial appearances here, but I was in Darlington, and just knowing up front, this is the goal of what we're asking for, law enforcement wise, is the defendant or the defense and the prosecution something to even try to start that dialogue and try to work for. Any questions?
We appreciate what you're doing.
So you were hired by the solicitor's office to work in Darlington?
No, ma'am. I was originally hired to work Darlington and Chesterfield, 3 days in Darlington and a day and a half here in Chesterfield.
Okay.
Darlington's docket is a little bit bigger than this one, but they have so much more violence. Every page on that docket, if I remember correctly, either had a murder or a shooting where someone got hit. Just about every, I mean, it just floored me like that. We got attempted murders on here, where it's just where they shot up a house. Luckily nobody got hit, but the focus, if I had to say where I feel like I needed more right now, is over there because of that. Every week they're working up a trial. And in the short time that I've been there, I think this is my 9th week, I helped work up four trials. One of them ended up pleading out. The other one, the defense pulled some stunt and got it delayed or continued. And then the other 2, we found some stuff from SLED that we felt like we were gonna have to have that had not been analyzed yet. And basically what it's hard for me to overcome. I get so involved with this case, and get ready, and then 3 days before the trial starts, I find out it's continued, and then a month later it comes back up, and I got to go through everything again. So it's fresh in my mind.
So you see this as a really big benefit that could be just a big step in helping the Chesterfield County docket, having say council look at funding an investigator just for Chesterfield County.
I think it's going to be a benefit. I think number one is streamlining these cases and moving them faster. I don't know what the finances are on them, how much it costed, but I get a case file and it's this thick with paperwork and this motion and all this stuff. Streamlining it would cut down on some of that, which would there would be some cost savings to the solicitor's office, probably the county, the clerk of court's office, and all that, of just not having that much, I call it clutter. And you're going to have some that they're not going to take the offer. You're going to have some that get out of jail and hightail it. But one of the things that impressed me, because I was worried about it, I didn't know how it was gonna be, received at the solicitor's office. She was even sending emails to, bail bondsmen, you need to find this guy and have him here. And, they are trying now to get some extra days in court from, common police to set up some of these. I don't know who sets those up or who, okays it or does it, but that effort has been made from the solicitor side to try to move this. And I'm just afraid that, you make some gains, and then if it falters, it's just gonna feel right like you.
Well, I know I appreciate you coming and talking to us and explaining what you're doing and giving everybody some detail about what can be done.
And this is a side note, but I came home 3 weeks ago, my wife's watching one of them forensic crime shows. And I said, I ain't watching that. And it's that type of stuff, whether it's body cams or just, trying to shut down loopholes and stuff.
Chris, can I pick up that you said this could actually be a county employee?
That's, y'all got to decide, first of all, is it beneficial and I mean, they've already talked with Will and all that. If it's a county employee, they're fine with that. Just the tidbits that I've got is worried about, what they do and who they answer to and all that, and that stuff y'all would have to work out. But if it's a county employee and you're paying them, you should be entitled to some type of report or quarter report, whatever the case is, numbers report, whatever it is. But
If it was a county employee, in your opinion, do you think they would get the same cooperation from the solicitor's office and the public defender's office that an employee of the solicitor's office is?
well, I would hope that if it is, it's been done in the past, that it's somebody that it's your employee that you're assigning to them. It's just like when I was with, assigned to DEA, my pay came from here. But I had to go by their policy, their rules, and work under their direction while I was over there. And I would think that, you got the say so and whatever that this is your guy, keep him working, but I want this, this, and this by this, and this date or whatever. But I know that it was done before in the past, and I just feel like the direction wasn't given there of what that employee was expected to do. It really wasn't his fault.
So would, and maybe this is a Kennard question, so let's say if the county did decide to make it a county employee, would they still be able to carry a badge and act in the same manner that you do as being an employee of this? No, I understand, but I'm saying if they were a county employee and not an employee of the solicitor's office, would they still be able to carry a badge and act in the capacity that you do the same way?
I don't know what the legalities is of that. And my hope would be, when y'all vetted through all this, that if it's somebody from over here, they're gonna have knowledge of everybody that works here. If it's somebody that's from over here, they're gonna have knowledge on some of these cases, and they're gonna know who's more thorough, versus who's slapping the stuff on a piece of paper and turning it in, so you know who you gotta deal with. I have no idea, because very few people that I've worked with over the years in Darlington are still there. So I'm starting fresh. And it's a struggle, but I'm willing to take it on. Probably the third week I was over there, Monty Bell said, here's the file cabinet. He said, you're welcome to go through any of these files and try to work what you can on this out. At some point, I hope that whoever's in these positions, and I don't know the ethical part or whatever, but where I can say, call the public defender for these 2 DUIs and say, this is all the highway patrol's asking, y'all good with it? If he says, yeah, then I can take it to the prosecutor and say, this is probably worked out if you know, that type of stuff. But, you know, I don't know if that's overstepping, right? I don't know yet. There's still another, to the next stage that I wanna go to. There's some things that I've got to see what hurdles are there to do it, but I'm gonna do it. I just, don't know what I'm gonna face when I get there, but I'm gonna find a way to do it.
And I think I saw you nodding, yes, the person would.
They would be able to, yes, ma'am, to Mr. Ford's question, if they, and by the way, I'm Kennard Redden, for those of you who don't know me, I'm deputy solicitor, and yes, because it's not unprecedented, we have had a county employee assigned to the solicitor's office as an investigator, and he was able to maintain his certification and everything, carry a badge and all, so that is possible, yes.
Can we bring him up to the?
Yes.
But I will say this, and I'll step aside, that I do feel like that there's qualities, and if y'all go with this, qualities that y'all need to look at for people skills and because I have talked to some jerks, even within sheriff's office and the police departments, and I had to explain, look, I'm not trying to dump your cases, you know, just being able to explain that instead of a couple times it would have been easy as heck just to hang up the phone and say the hell with it.
Well, we thank you so much for coming and explaining, you know, the process and what you're doing, and we thank you definitely for doing it.
Well, thanks for your time.
Yes. Mr. Kennard, if you.
If it's okay, Chesterfield Hammond, our office manager, will be here just to make sure that I don't screw up. But before I start, let me thank y'all for having us, and let me thank Chris Page, because this was actually his idea. And as a matter of fact, the notes I took refer to it as the Chris Page model as it relates to what we want and need in an investigator, because he set the bar pretty high. And he did it on his own initiative. Like he said, everything he did was on his own initiative. And this is why he's actually mainly headquartered in Darlington, but you know, he took the initiative to get in contact with officers, to look at the docket, go over and see what could be worked out, reach out to the individual officers to find out what they would be willing to live with. And that actually ended up paying dividends last week, because we had general sessions last week. And as Chris said, Monday we had to break early because there was a funeral. A friend of ours, an attorney down in Merle's Inlet, passed away tragically. And so the funeral, so we had a short day of court Monday. And then Thursday, we had to leave early because the judge had a medical appointment out of town. So, on Thursday.
At 2:30 too, they had to go to the meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then, with all that said, I think total was, we were able to move, I think it was about 255 indictments for the month of April, but we only had one term of court in April, so the lion's share of that was during court last week. And I got to give a shout out to Mary Thomas Johnson Lee and Sarah Campbell, because you may not know, but within the last 6 weeks, we've had a staff reshuffling here in Chesterfield. Just to put it in perspective, both of the attorneys that were assigned here, one took a job over in the 12th Circuit in Florence, and one was reassigned to Darlington. So Mary Thomas and Sarah literally was hired maybe 6 weeks ago, if that. And Mary Thomas had been doing the domestic violence cases around the circuit. So she had to jump in because, and I've had cases in Marlboro. I've got cases all over the circuit. So I'm deputy solicitor, and I'm headquartered here in Chesterfield, but obviously I have obligations elsewhere. So it was on them to make sure that court ran last week. So within that period of time, and a lot of it was based on the work that Chris did, he laid out a template for them. They took it and we literally had folks in court asking us to take a break because it ran as well as I've ever seen it run during the week. Now, we didn't have a trial last week, it was all pleas and motions last week, but they worked their rear ends off last week. And I can't take credit, I know Chris had mentioned me in there, I was there for a little bit of it, but they did the lion's share of the work. Literally 6 weeks ago, this was not even their responsibility, and to take that and have the week that they had last week, they definitely deserve credit for the work that they did last week. I'm gonna be brief because Chris covered the lion's share of it. There's one thing I would add, and Chris touched on it, and that is about the jail. Because a lot of it was on the docket in general. But that role can also benefit the jail, which of course I know is of interest to y'all because that is a revenue depleter, for lack of a better term. And so from that standpoint, just imagine an investigator who's assigned to Chesterfield full-time being able to, while also working the docket, also being able to attend to the jail, making sure, because you've got people who may not be charged with murder and you know, they may be charged with lesser charges that sometimes, in all honesty, can fall through the cracks. Well, if you've got an investigator here, they can help the attorneys in that regard, because here's the thing from the attorney standpoint. In theory, it would be nice if we could cover all of this, but we can't because of the responsibilities that we have in case preparation for court. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we are going to be finding out, there's a meeting on the 25th in Columbia that the Chief Justice has said, I don't know if he's gonna be there, Justice James from the Supreme Court, Buck James from the Supreme Court is actually going to be conducting the meeting. And basically what it comes down to is, those of you, most of you may not know, the solicitor's office is no longer in control of the docket. Let me repeat that. The solicitor's office is no longer in control of the docket. The docket under the case, with the Langford case that came down several years ago, has now been moved toward, it hadn't been codified by statute, but the Chief Justice has issued a memorandum indicating that we are to start complying with the terms that have been laid out in that case. Basically, what that means is the judiciary and the clerk's office have control over the docket now. The public defenders and solicitors, we have input into that process, but before we could call the case, we could determine when a case is called for trial. We lose that. Matter of fact, I lost a case last year that I didn't want tried in a specific spot because I wanted to try the co-defendant first. It was out of my hands. Case was ordered to trial ahead of time, and as a result, you know, I'm still able to go after the principal, but still, from a strategic standpoint, yeah, we lost something in that deal. But by and large, I think we just have to adapt and overcome it. So I say that to say that, you know, we don't have control over the docket anymore. We do have input. And what we do is we do work with the clerk's office and with the chief administrative judge to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to keep the docket moving forward. So that is a change, and it's going to change even further because I understand that they're gonna put an emphasis on first appearances and trying to get cases resolved, which is important from an investigative standpoint to the point that Chris was making. If I'm preparing a case for trial, to his point, if I'm preparing a case for trial, a CSC case or a murder case or an armed robbery case, I'm not gonna have as much time to attend to a first appearance that may be coming up 2 weeks before my major trial. Having an investigator in that role to help in that process would be invaluable, because while if I'm over here, that means something's not being attended to over here. But if you've got an investigator such as Chris, as I refer to the Chris Page model, then you actually compensate for that gap. In other words, that investigator can help compensate for that gap where my attention may be elsewhere. His or her attention is still filling in, making sure that the docket is being taken care of, making sure that the jail is being attended to. So there are great benefits to having an investigator who would be assigned to Chesterfield County because it would help all of us out. And the key thing in my mind, and I will quote Solicitor Rogers in this regard, if we could clone Chris Page and put him in each county, we'd be doing a whole lot of good throughout the circuit. So with that said, like I said, I can't add much to what Chris said, other than to thank him for the work that he's done and for the example that he has set. And I can tell you that it has been invaluable, and it has been something that, in my years in the solicitor's office, it is, and this is not knocking anybody, but the initiative that he's taken has been a first in our experiences, and it's something that we can actually take and hopefully grow upon. So with that, I don't know if Jessica has anything to add, but with that, like I said, I don't think I can add anything to what Chris said, other than to just ask if there are any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Redmond, you know me, and you know how to shoot straight.
Absolutely.
I'll say what I mean what I say, and
Yes, sir.
you call me an ugly name, and it's okay. But personally, and I don't know how you feel, talking about whether it be the county or the solicitor, how is that person gonna serve two masters?
Well, and that's a good question, and that's something that, as we stand here today, we may not be able to answer all the questions today in that regard, but hopefully we will put together a process to eliminate those concerns, because that's a thought that's also crossed my mind as it relates to, from a practical standpoint, how do you make it work? I am convinced that it can work if you have people of goodwill and who are genuine in their desire to see the system work. I think that it can be done. There's a process. Obviously, even the person who would be brought on, there would be a process that would have to be put in place to, as it relates to hiring that person. And then, of course, between our office and council, determining how that's gonna work as it relates to who they answer to, things of that nature. Those may be questions that we cannot answer today, but that we can at least start a dialogue toward figuring out a framework to make this work. But I will say this, I'm absolutely convinced that it can work, and that it will work, especially if you have, again, if we can clone and have someone of the ilk of Mr. Page, then I have no doubt that this can work and benefit the citizens of Chesterfield County.
There's no harder working person in this county than that gentleman up there. To know him for you.
Oh, he's sending emails on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, he didn't tell you that, but matter of fact, we got, you know, it wasn't Sunday, I think this past Sunday, we got another email from Chris, and so that's why. And here's the thing, Chris and I talked, and the other caveat would be that he's agreed to do it, I'm putting him on the spot, that he would in essence train that person, because I asked him about, you know, whoever we bring on, he would be willing to train that person, because as you've seen how he goes about doing his job, like I said, that set the standard. And whoever we bring on needs to live up to that standard to be effective, because if they do, we'll all benefit from it.
Next question, and you may have an answer, you may not. Could this position be partially funded through the PTI money? If we cost share,
That
I'm
would be.
putting you on the spot.
That would be.
That's my job.
That would be a question that I couldn't answer without, off the top of my head. It depends on what the definition of partial is, so I guess that would be a hard question for me to answer at this time. I'd have to yield to my, our office manager who handles more the financing part of it. I'm the trial lawyer, which means that I get to dodge questions like that.
100-something PTI cases, there's money there.
Well, those are warrants. So, and most of the time they have at least 2 warrants, or 2 indictments, that go in. So that, the number, because we go off of warrant numbers and not defendant numbers really, so that's not per person. So I know last year for 2022, there were 181 warrants that went in. That could be 50 people. It just depends on if they got 5 charges.
I'd just like me to look into that,
Okay.
and if we could cost share on that, I think that would sway me, Mr. Redmond, and if I understood you correctly, Judge Birch and the clerk controls the docket now.
He is chief administrative judge, and
That's
of
correct.
course, last year it was Judge Nettles who was in control of the docket. And so, that'll change, it depends on who the chief administrative judge is going to be, but.
Mostly Judge Nettles worked on his old murder cases.
Exactly, he was focusing in, and even with what's coming down, my understanding is that 80%, I think, is gonna be, of the trial docket, is gonna have to be, cases older than 2 years old. And then everything else, I think there'll be an allowance for your high profile cases. There may be a case that is high profile that may not be able to wait as long. And, so there are certain, jail cases, for instance, there's a certain allowance for a percentage of jail cases to be involved in that too.
The jail is my biggest concern.
And I remember from our discussions.
And, it's costing us probably $55 a day to keep that person in jail. And Mr. Redmond, we got some folks in there, and they bad boys, in there over 1,000 days.
I'm glad
That's
you,
too long.
I'm glad you raised that, because let me tell you what just happened as far as moving the docket. This is the thing a lot of people don't understand, and I need to make sure this is clear before I leave here. When we have a trial, we only have, some counties are fortunate, they may have 3 courts going on at a time. They're bigger counties, I get that, they have more funding, I get that. We have 1 court going on at a time, 1 general sessions court going on at a time. So when I'm trying a case, and unfortunately, most of the cases I deal with, I'm the violent crimes coordinator in essence. Most of my cases are gonna eat up a whole week. Matter of fact, you may have seen some have gone over a week, recently. And so, when that happens, guess how many pleas we get done? Few, if any. And so, it's a balancing act.
You got a hard job.
And so, but to your point, this time, court administration, I'm not saying this, I know we're on the record, but court administration gave us 3 terms of court for the next 6 months. Let me repeat that. Court administration gave us 3 weeks of court for the next 6 months starting
And we
July.
pay the biggest portion out of all of the circuit, and get the least amount of court time.
And we did do this, we traded with Darlington, so Darlington, we're waiting for the final order, but they're 2 weeks, 1 in July, 1 in October, where Darlington, we've agreed for Darlington to give to us, so at least we're looking at 5 weeks of court in the next 6 months. So that's better than nothing. There are some general sessions, non-jury days, which I'm a huge advocate of. When we have those non-jury weeks, we can do pleas during those weeks, and then the cases that need to be tried, we can. But to your point about the number of people in jail and the length of time that they're in jail, that is something that we are trying to address and get moved. As a matter of fact, the one that's been in there the longest, he's scheduled for the 12th of June. So we're trying to, we've got an order of who's been in there the longest. And we're gonna try to start.
Right now, it's been over a year.
We're gonna try to start doing it. I'm sorry.
You got over a dozen right now that's in there, it's been over a year.
And like I said, I wish there was something I can do about it, but let me just say this, and I apologize if it comes off blunt. But one of the things, we talk about hard job, let's say we've got people, because we don't have so much court. So, everybody, if you go down that list, most of the ones you're referring to are charged with murder. One of the things that people, especially judges, have been getting crucified over is the ones that are getting out on bond while they're charged with murder. I myself have had to put a reporter in place about the fact that, well, why are murderers getting out on bond? So that directly clashes with what you just asked me, because the answer to that, if we can't try them, would be to let them out on bond. Well, if we do that, then I'm gonna have a report in my face when that person reoffends, like has happened a couple times, I believe, between Darlington and Florence. So therein lies the quandary. There's no good answer, there's no good solution, and I'm not an apologist, I'm a realist in that regard. It is what we have, is. All we can do is do everything we can with what we have to try to move that. And that's why I say people of goodwill who mean well and are willing to work, if we do that, it's not gonna ever be perfect, but at least you will see that we are moving forward and we are doing everything we can. And that's why I look at Chris and the work he's put in. He has set a standard that hopefully we can all follow and move forward with. Yes, sir.
If I can get you a job description of the job Chris is doing right now that's been in effect for 30 years, would that help you look at it?
If you get that,
The job description that he's doing right now.
oh yeah, look,
We've had it for over 30 years where I used to live.
any job descriptions we are open to, you know, this is one of these situations where we're open to any suggestions. I think it would be, it would show a bit of hubris on our part if we were to say, oh, no, we got this, no, we're by all means open to any suggestions.
Okay.
You know, we have people that have been in the detention center for a long time, and we have a lot of people that we need to kind of clear the docket, but hopefully, from what I'm hearing, this helps.
Well, it does, because what it does is having somebody like an investigator like Chris that can work on some of those other cases, it allows folks like me to be able to focus on the bigger fish, to be quite honest with you. That way I can put in my time preparing, because I think I saw something I read earlier about serving two masters, or maybe somebody asked about serving two masters. And to a degree we do, because we have to look at the docket, but to y'all's point, we also have to look at, you know, the quantity versus quality, and by that I mean you got some heavy hitters that are sitting in jail that we need to move. But, and I'm gonna be honest, and I know I'm on the record, but you know, there's a premium put on the numbers of cases as well, the size of the docket, and those things clash sometimes. And so if we can find a happy medium, so yes, we can spend our time addressing those folks, the violent offenders in jail, that'd be great. But unfortunately, we can't split ourselves into, but you know, we can't split ourselves but so much. But all of the questions and concerns you've raised, not only are valid, I can assure you, those are things that I've lost sleep over trying to figure out. In almost 30 years of doing this job, it's still a work in progress, and it will be once I'm gone, I believe. But at least we can make improvements on it. That's what we're trying to do.
Apparently there's gonna be a new solicitor here in the next year and a half.
And it will not be me. Let me it will not be me. I've been asked ad nauseam, it will not be me. I'm sorry.
You're
Mr.
already
Curtis.
one man gang and you're my friend. And I appreciate what you do, and I don't see how you juggle what you do, but I think Judge Burke worked awful hard. They disposed of 85 cases last week. He kept it fluid. We had 108 in jail, and Mr. Edmond, do you realize that we are housing prisoners out of the county because we had nowhere to put them?
Oh, I absolutely am aware of that, because some of them are mine.
But
Some
the
of
Chief
them are my
Justice, the
defendants.
Chief Justice thinks that we've got a 240 bed jail. And we don't.
No.
It's 105, I do believe. But, I don't know if reaching out to him would do any good, maybe at this meeting, but he's under the wrong impression.
Well, here's the thing that's gonna help us in that meeting, being perfectly honest with you, Mr. Curtis, is having this discussion before we go to Columbia is gonna be helpful for me, because guess what Kennard Redmond's gonna do at that meeting? I'm gonna say, look, I stood in front of our county council on May 3rd. These were the questions and concerns they have when you're talking about what you're going to try to impose on us to implement. So this is actually beneficial for me, because when we get into that meeting, and I don't know what's gonna be said in that meeting, but at least I'll be in a position to say, this is what my council in Chesterfield County is concerned about as it relates to X, Y, and Z, especially when you're talking about where to put resources. I guess triage, this really is a triage situation. Where do we put resources? So again, this is gonna be beneficial, because now I know what the mindset is of council and the concerns of council, and then I can actually incorporate that into whatever I might have to say in Columbia that day.
Please don't use my name.
And you're gonna be the first name out of my mouth.
Well, we're again, thank you.
I'm gonna give you all the credit.
I'll be indicted in 3 weeks.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you,
for
appreciate
sharing.
it, thank y'all.
I got one last thing, if I can.
87 in there today.
Yes, sir.
Last week, I wasn't in there much, but every offer that they brought up for a plea is what was presented to the judge from the solicitor's
test attorneys and actually, tried to get it lowered and all that stuff. And there was some that were changed, but it was by the judge's decision. And they felt, just law enforcement, because they were notified what it was. They were just appreciative that they knew that their thoughts were put before the judge. So they couldn't blame anybody because it was put before. And, with them having the whole list, I just feel like the next 2 or 3 terms of court, if they get those special days to do it, it's where the big benefit is gonna come and start with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're down to unfinished business, 2023-24 general fund budget overview, Ms. Stanley.
Okay, I think most of the items that we have left to review is mostly the departmental, but there's a couple items in the third draft budget that I want to go over. If you go to page 6, I found out last week that the local government, I got the notification that local government monies were actually gonna be getting more than what we had budgeted from last year. So we estimating, $93,000 coming in for local government page 6.
Yeah, I'm getting more.
And then your, rural stabilization fund, get like 56,000. So on top of this, we're coming into this meeting with adding $149,000 more dollars.
Okay, one question, if I may, Chairman Burns. And I think this is for Mr. Rucker. With the opioid money, it started coming in, be $75,000 a year.
It's,
Coming in,
but you got to apply for
and you
it.
have to apply for it and specifically say what it's going to be used for.
Because what they do is they get we need to get our committee, that committee we talked about, we gotta get that committee together. And if we need other entities, just like Alpha, they're gonna play a big part in this. And we get together and there's certain procedures and certain paperwork they have to fill out, and they meet quarterly. And we would submit it, just say for instance, if we submitted it this month, I don't know if they meet at the beginning or the end of the quarter, so they would take that to their committee and they would approve it or deny it.
Okay.
But it's got to be certain criteria, it's not just money out there for just anything. It's
That
mo-
happened.
Yeah, okay. Also, the other thing on the federal inmate housing, we spoke with the sheriff and he's okay with doing away with that program, so I guess, we need to make a decision, are we gonna void that contract for federal inmates? And which means that revenue would go away.
If it's just not working out, Sheriff.
Mr. Curtis, we may have 8 federal inmates in there right now. I'd have to go back and look at the roster, but we don't have enough to make money on it like you should. Like a lot of jails make money because they have whole wings dedicated to federal inmates, and they have enough. They have a volume that they can actually make money, but we just don't have that volume. We don't have room to take.
We don't have the space, and plus they spend their time tearing up more than the hell we can fix.
They don't send them to us because they're their best inmates.
That's
They
right.
don't want them in the
They're
federal,
not
so
model
that's why they
prisoners.
send them to us.
Thank you.
So I guess we just scratch that line item, federal inmate housing,
So we gonna void the contract, or
is that what?
make a motion?
That's what the sheriff recommends.
It's financially not advantageous for us.
No.
So,
Make a motion.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that we void the contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Good with that?
Okay. Based on your recommendation. Anything else, Ms. Stanley?
Not on that page, so I guess on page 8, is solicitor, the rent, we'll just hold off on that. It seems like we're not gonna, you know, sell that building. Let's see. If you go to page 14, got notification yesterday from the state on the indigent, assistant act contribution monies that we send to the state. And it's been going down every year, and once again, it's went down to 51,014. You see the first item that I got highlighted, 53,156. So next year I'll be budgeting $51,014.
$3,000 net loss.
This is savings. It'll be a 2,000. It's going down from 53 to 51. It's gonna be savings for us because that's an expense. I guess on the next page, the comprehensive plan, we'll go over that when we do the departmental request, because that's one of the first line items on the departmental request. And I think my next item is in the detention center. Let me make sure, because I don't want to skip over anything. Yes, if you go to page 30. On the detention center, the communication line, we had passed or approved at, last month's meeting to increase communications because of some of the contracts. Well, since then, they found out that there was an error in the, contract, the upgrade. So we actually could decrease that back down to 25,000. They said that they didn't need that increase, that they had found whenever they reviewed it and was going over some of the contract, that there was something wrong on it. So I'll be decreasing that back down to 25,000. I think that's all on the budget. So then I guess you could go to the departmental request, Ms. Hattie.
First item on here is, council staff has estimated the amount for the comprehensive plan members. And my question there, are we talking the members that the council has?
No, we'll have to act, the 12 members, yes ma'am. And see, what I kinda done was I estimated, I, spoke with, what's that guy's name? Joseph, I couldn't think of his name, with Petticoat. I spoke with him and he's basically estimating 15 months. So I pretty much took 15 months at the 12 members, $25 per meeting, and then the per diem. So I've got, you know, I went by each town and got the round trips of what it would cost for the mileage, and then I got for the meeting. So I pretty much come up with 15 months of the meeting will be $4,500, and then the mileage will be like $2,500. So basically, an estimate of $7,000.
Discussion? Questions?
Pay for this out of the ARP money. Is that correct? We pay for it out of the ARP money?
Just at 7,000 pay out of ARP. I mean, if that's where y'all want to.
That's gonna be an ongoing expense.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
not
mean, then you could
$7,000
only,
a year, but
you only could do what, you know, for next budget year. I would, personally, I would, you know, increase it from, you know, it's not the
We have
7,000.
done any ARP that's reoccurring funds.
Mhm.
I got you. If that's what the finance director is recommending, I don't see how I can.
It just kinda is what it is.
If you come up with that, it could be less.
Yeah, it could, that, yeah, cause that's just a rough estimate, cause I didn't know each individual member. So I pretty much said, well, I couldn't go wrong with just doing each town. You know, there may be 2 from Chesterfield versus 1 from Payton and Chesterfield, so there's a little bit of savings there. And there may not be at every single meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the recommendation coming from our finance director.
Correct.
Okay. Assessor, requesting a 5% salary increase for office staff, and I think we had agreed that we would use the same thing for all of the departments in terms of salary increases. So, Detention Center. Requesting 4 slots back, that sheriff gave increases to retain officers, and that cost is $155,600, along with French at $103,208. Also, notice that it's highlighted that we are requesting a staffing analysis be done, and that is going to be done, is that right, Sheriff?
Yes, ma'am.
Has that begun? Have we had any discussion about that, or?
I got the paperwork just the other day, and so we're in the process.
Yep, I called Mr. Benfield, he does that association, and Sheriff and I both had to sign an agreement to do it. He said it should happen, hopefully he should get in here by the end of this upcoming month.
So, move the table till we get that analysis back.
If it's done by the end of this month, well,
That's the thing. I should know more by the next finance committee meeting, hopefully. So if you want to put it off then to
Till
another
the next
meeting,
meeting.
at least.
Mr. Eubanks, does this coincide, and I'm a little bit confused and naive, does this coincide with the 4 slots that we put in 3 years ago for work camp people, and then we didn't use them, and we gave 2 to the sheriff and kept 1 or 2 for ourselves? I'm trying to go back from memory. Any help on that, Michelle?
You talking about whenever we changed over to our new food service, when
No, we added
absorbed.
slots.
Okay.
We added slots, we actually hired, we thought we was gonna have some chain gang folks, and we actually allocated for 4 slots. You hired 1 man, found out they didn't have any chain gang slots, and he was the one out there cleaning out the pipes, and he worked 2 days and quit. Does that refresh your memory?
No, sir. What I do remember, the past sheriff came to us in 2019 and asked for the detention and work camp and detention center all fall under him. We had a staffing thing did then. The one before that came to like 30, don't quote me on the exact numbers. Like we had, it worked under the county, it was called 32 employees over there. The sheriff at that time, falling under him, it was gonna be able to reduce it to like 26 employees. That was another selling point to council as to why to let the sheriff maintain it at that time. That's the last one that's been done. 2 slots I still have in place at the road department, I think you might be talking about, in case we ever get work camp people in place. But until the meantime, they go out and clean out pipes and all that themselves. Now, I use those 2 slots as labor.
But they were budgeted on the road department, not the
That's
teachers.
correct, they're budgeted in the road department.
Because they were the road guard.
These 4 slots they originated from, they were there in the original budget during the transition from Sheriff Dixon to Sheriff Streeter. And to be because they didn't have but 6 employees when the new administration took over at the jail. They had nobody to hire and couldn't entertain anybody to hire with the salary that they were given. So they had to utilize the funding from these 4 spots to be able to enhance the pay for to be able to hire staff, correctional officers, and they've gotten to pay within $1,000 starting pay of a deputy. And so that's what they're asking for. They're asking to basically increase their budget enough to replace the money that they had to use to increase salaries with 4 more people.
The staffing assessment that they go by now costs 26. They took 4 slots to increase the salaries, like Mr. Ford was talking about. Right now, they have 22 positions.
And they're all full.
And they're all full because they've raised the salaries, so it only allows for 22 positions. They're asking for those 4 slots back. is what,
They wanna make that department whole again.
by the staffing analysis that's in place now.
Okay, but you're working on a new staffing analysis now.
That's correct. We've
Because I'm at the table
We've put
until we
in,
get that information
we've
back.
asked that they come back in and redo it.
It's been moved and seconded to take this until our next meeting. And, you know, based on the staffing analysis, it might be 26, it might be 28. We
Well,
don't know.
yes, ma'am, we could take a ding on staffing analysis, but we certainly would have taken a ding had we not gotten where we are, because we were way short, you know, when you got 14 open positions, we know we were gonna take a ding then, so we were trying to get in compliance as close as we could, so that's why we did what we did, but,
I understand why you had to do what you had to do.
yes.
And, if it's getting to the point where, in my opinion, I know this is on the record, but all you could hire was kids, and they were scared. That's about what it amounted to, am I correct? Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
to get quality people, you've got to pay. And to keep them and retain them, you're going to have to pay them. I understand that. And now you've got a full staff over there. You were, I think y'all hired, I heard the number, 10 people?
Or that,
Okay. So
About
you-
14.
Fully staffed.
yes.
Jail's running great.
Fully staffed according to their budget. They're fully staffed according to their budget, not according to what the staffing analysis that they're currently operating under.
And that's why we're asking for
Asking
the
to get
staffing
this up.
analysis,
Yes,
because when we get it, we want to fund what's required.
Yes, ma'am.
And if it requires 26, then we'll come back and do the 4. If it's down to 22, then we leave it as it is. If it's up to 30, we have to do what we have to do.
We'll have to negotiate.
We have to do
I'm perfectly fine with that. Yes, ma'am.
Question, it looks like we're gonna be struggling to get that analysis back in time for final draft, right? Is that
Yeah.
kind of where we're at?
I don't think
By
so.
the end of the month, is that gonna be here in time for us to make it?
I mean, we'll have.
And do our voting on?
We'll probably have a special meeting in June for the final reading, so I think we're gonna kind of, don't you,
We will,
Chairman Murphy?
we will, but I'm thinking we're gonna probably have another one this month as well.
Yes, ma'am.
But as far as having this report back in time, it looks like we should.
We'll have to have a special meeting of the whole council in order to
Oh, yeah.
vote this budget.
May I request a bathroom break? Is that medicine?
Okay, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Oh, boy.
Just right.
Oh, man.
I know. Cold out here.
Oh, God.
Is he going to be outside?
Why don't you go check for us, Troy?
What's gonna get one?
Hey, then go check it out. It's all actually good news,
All the old people came up with one that, I know the one that moved. I thought the old people came, when they came across, I know the one in the group.
Huh? Not too much.
Absolutely, absolutely.
bring the papers, like, bring it
All
I know you were.
right, can you get them back in here too? Let's look.
He's in the bathroom.
I think he went.
There was a line in that bathroom.
I think he went to the smoke.
I went out to that one.
I talked to her a little bit.
Somehow or other, whenever they broke up, that Marcy ended up cold locked one day. I said, yeah, this didn't work out too good. And I said, yeah, divorce proceedings. We ended up inheriting a rabbit.
My boy,
All right, we're ready to continue. The next item is E911. The cost of living increase for employees, and I won't say this every time, so when we see this on here, we know we're gonna skip that. Because it'll be one for departments. Requesting building and grounds increase of $2,000, and staff did verify with the director that they're trying to upfit some of the things in the building that has needed to be done for several years in the old buildings, such as upfitting kitchen area and bathrooms. What is your opinion? Questions, comments?
It's needed. Upgrades are needed, or are we just trying to figure out, are they needed upgrades for the facilities?
That's what the information says here.
What you said.
Yeah,
It's an older building.
it's something all the time.
Right.
Some of the kitchen area, the faucets and, the bathrooms replacing some of the toilets. and
We've
stuff.
had some big issues
Floor.
with the sewer, we had to go in and just bite the bullet and do, I mean, so yeah, it's an ongoing thing.
But they did get it fixed.
Mhm.
I think they had to replace some pipe, if I remember correctly. This is valid request, what you like?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I move.
Awesome.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the $2,000 increase. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item, requesting to purchase used or new dependable vehicle for E911 on-call 24/7 PAC officer, $25,000. Staff is reviewing to see if revenue is there to cover this call. Also, sheriff stated he may have an old fleet vehicle they could utilize. So what's the status?
We spoke with the sheriff and them yesterday, all the vehicles that they had in place were, they needed to get rid of, I mean, they were.
That's probably had several.
Right. So,
We've gotten all the goodie out of it.
usually when they've got some surplus, it's usually pretty much worn out.
Now, and there again, the older I get, the more confused I get, but there was something in place that the TAC officer, whether it's gonna stay at 911 or go to the jail. Sheriff is before your time, with the old administration. That administration, to keep it at 911, guaranteed us $25,000, if I'm not mistaken. Now, is that agreement still valid, or should we hold the current sheriff to that, or?
I was actually waiting on that to when Ms. Burns got to the 2 additional staff that they're asking for, and then I'll address that.
That'd be fine.
All right, so
But as far as a vehicle, I would like to hold on to that, and let's see if we can't find them another vehicle.
Cause their revenue has depleted, I mean, they don't have the revenue, and I've been speaking to, Brittany about that, because just like, for instance, the month of April, I'm having to, hold back the reimbursement that's owed to the general fund, because they don't have enough money there. So I've kind of questioned her about why the revenues went down.
Mr. Eubanks, is the, economic development division coming out?
That's why if we could hold up and let it.
Okay, I'll just let you be the hero.
All right, so we'll just put that on hold. And we are economic development. As far as the laptop, staff check with IT, this laptop's already been ordered and received this year, so no increase is needed, so that's
Thank you,
not. Communications increase of 2250. Staff checked on costs, an increase would be only 1,200 estimated, so I would recommend we go with staff cost of 1,200 as opposed to 2250.
I'll concur and make that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we reduce the 2250 to 1,200.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's been moved and second, all in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Did you want to talk about something?
On down. On
Emergency
telecommunications.
preparedness, requesting a cost of living increase, and again, we're not gonna
We'll
do
do that later.
Landfill, requesting utilities increase of $5,000. Staff has reviewed this line item again, and last fiscal year remained $200 balance. Don't think it should be increased any more than $1,500. Not $1,000. Question.
If they had a remaining balance of 200, now, the increase for utilities, we talking about water?
Water and electricity. So I don't foresee.
I don't see where it's gonna be $1,500.
That's graciously, you know, they wanted 5,000, but I said 1,500, I feel like would be graciously, you know, if any increase.
I mean, we don't have to pay the utility bills anyway. Why don't we consider?
I'd like to bring up something, if I could.
Sure.
I know it had kind of been bounced around a little bit. What about entertaining the idea of seeing exactly what it would cost to do what some of the other counties do and do a solid waste fee on the residential tax bill, and do away with having to pay at the dump, and letting the solid waste fee cover the dump fees. And we could probably, just by running some rough numbers, was looking at like $40 per year for a solid waste fee, and then it would allow us to open up the convenience centers more often, and that we wouldn't have to worry about having two at certain places, worried about handling money and getting robbed. And it would also allow us to maybe have an extra litter control officer that was designated just for doing litter enforcement. And I think that's one of our biggest complaints as a council member that we get, you know, as far as just litter everywhere. And I know it won't solve the problem, because people's going to be sorry either way, but I think it would drastically help. And I was just wondering if that might be an option.
It's a plausible idea, but I think it's a little bit late to get it in on this year's budget. But I like what you're thinking, but then I'd like for the whole council to consider. Like I said, a lot of other counties do that, but then what's to stop these folks from coming across the line, even though you got a South Carolina plate, and dumping their trash for free? I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons in there I'd like to explore, Mr. Ford. And get back to landfill, I recommend the increase of $500. I'll make that as a motion.
Well, I can probably get behind that, but I mean, they had $200 balance left over. I mean, do we need an increase at all? I mean, are we expecting the light bill to go up? I mean, if we
The
are.
water's gonna be the main,
Yeah, it's,
Well, that's a fact, I agree.
it's went up
the
some.
water's gonna be the main thing, if it's that small amount of money will cover it, I don't have a problem with it, having to go back and do supplemental appropriations is harder than approving it now.
Well, like you said about gasoline several times, we have to pay the water bill when it comes, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll second 500.
It's been moved and seconded that instead of 5,000, we'll increase that by 500.
Yes, sir.
All in favor of said motion, let it be known by sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Don't flush as much.
But I too, Ethan, I think that's a good idea to do that solid waste fee, investigation.
Sure,
Maybe for next year, that might be something we really, could do.
sure.
Not a bad concept.
Library, requesting one full-time position, fringe benefits, and accounting book increase of $5,000. And at the time, we talked about this last time, there was a grant, but it hadn't been.
Gonna be based on the bookmobile.
Yeah.
When,
Where we at with
I
that?
think you were waiting on to see when the bookmobile was actually coming in. And I hadn't
Or
gotten
even
that
if,
report.
even if we go get one of those.
Right, I mean, yes.
If we don't get one, we don't need it, we blow it.
We don't know when.
I move the table.
Second.
Magistrate, Chief Magistrate wanting council to consider treating the magistrates as regular county employees when considering cost of living increases, because the state isn't increasing them each year as other judges. Note, staff noticed Friday that the state has proposed an increase to magistrates, which means they will be submitting an update requirement maximum pay that county has to pay the magistrates. This cost increase will come from the county, not the state. And see, I was thinking it was coming from the state.
No, they don't get paid from the state, so that's his whole thing is, they've always pretty much in the past, when the judges got increases, the state would give them increases, but they pretty much done away with, excluded them the last, about 3 years ago. They started excluding them, so they haven't really got an increase, because we're not increasing because we're considering them as elected or appointed officials, and then the state's not doing it. But on the catch side of it, the state's gonna require us, to pay them a certain amount, and that's what this proposed budget is that the state has proposed, is they're gonna raise their maximum pay. So we're gonna be forced to increase their salaries by what the state sends to us if they pass this.
It's just another unfunded mandate that comes down from the state.
But I guess the thing that you've got to decide is, okay, the state's gonna increase their funding, that they're gonna require us, make it mandatory for us to pay them. Are you gonna be, or is that all that you're gonna do, or are you gonna consider them as a regular employee versus a appointed? And include them in the increases that you give this year? So that's your decision that you need to make is, wait to see what the state's gonna do, if they're gonna increase them, and that's what they're gonna get increased, or are you gonna actually include them as an employee?
Well, now, you said you've already got the numbers from the state.
No, they haven't made the final.
But I'm talking about, we have not got the numbers from the state, from the, what we used to call the state grant and aid. We have not got those numbers yet, right?
That's right, this is in their proposal, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's in their proposal.
There's some issues, over here, which, to me, is actually none of our concern, as far as staffing. We've got one full-time magistrate, 2 part-time magistrates. And it's creating staffing problems, but then that is up to the senators, not us. So, I don't know what the answer there is, but they should be money in that account, because we're not paying one full-time and 2 part-time.
Well, yeah, you've got
We're
money
entitled
set
to
aside
2
for
and a half
that.
magistrates.
You've got money set aside for that measure, but at any given time, if they say, put on another full-time magistrate, then, we'll have that money, or either if you use it, you'll have to come up with it. But Judge Melton's issue is that he's got some of his office staff, you know, which is county, they're pretty much getting close to making what they're making. So that was one of his things, you know. He said, I hate to come to you and, you know, complain. He said, but, you know, we got our staff and that is pretty much all gonna get caught up with us because y'all been giving them increases over the years. And the last couple of years, we haven't gotten anything.
That makes sense.
Well, can we?
We've also got more clerks than we got judges.
I think one of the things that I understand is the fact that the part-timers are really part-time, because one is an assistant principal, so they cannot leave the school, so it's only after hours with the school. And
Both of them's part-time. Both of them schools, and plus we give one permission to be the town judge several years ago. Well, that's still true or
Yes,
not,
that's
I don't
correct.
know.
That's correct.
And then you have another that's a primary caregiver for a brother who has a number of medical issues that is out a lot. So he's, I think, a little bit behind the 8 ball.
Well,
I got a little personal experience with it, with part of what I do, but there is a issue that I see. You know, when you have 2 part-time people and both of them are only available at the same times, you know, that's very difficult. If you don't have but one job, who's going to be doing it? You know, if in a perfect world, if you was going to have 2 part-time people, you'd have somebody that was available first part of the day and then somebody else available for the second part of the day. And I will personally say that they are working John Davis to death.
yeah, it is. It's a problem there. Not only him, but Chief Method.
Yeah.
Chief Method. But then there again, I think we need to take that up, or they need to take, somebody needs to take it up with the Senate. Whether it's don't we have a legislative committee, Mr. Chairman?
Judicial committee. Yeah, we have judicial committee.
Is that something that
Well,
we need
from my understanding from him, he has tried to be in touch with Senator Malloy and Senator Gustafson, and he ain't gotten anything.
I mean, they just keep telling him, you know, we don't hold back the county from giving y'all money, you know. The county should, you know, include you as a regular employee. So they're kind of just throwing it back and, you know, throwing him back our way.
Could we come up with an either or? You know, you know, do we need to try to give them a raise on our own unless the money comes in different from what the state says we have to pay them, and if that's a better option, you know, or if that's equivalent of getting a raise? I mean, I think they do deserve something.
I think they deserve a raise, but I'd rather wait and see what
What
the
the numbers
state
is gonna
says. We have to, you know, we have to pay them. It may be more than we're gonna give the elected official. So, I would say we table this until we find out what the
take it for
state,
information?
yeah, what the state requires. But I do agree they need.
We got some issues.
Register of deeds, that again, we can just skip that, because that falls in line with other departments in terms of cost of living. Sheriff requesting salary increase of $135,606.25, which consists of regular pay scale increases needed, pay scale not funded, funds that charge to home detention account, $35,350.25, and plus 2 new deputies. Discussion?
Sheriff, on the home detention now, that's a revenue generator, correct?
Yes, ankle monitor.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I recall going to a meeting, and this person, I believe you were there, we discussed changing companies, and, what does ankle monitors, or maybe this is a question I shouldn't ask in the open public meeting. I don't know legally if I can or not. What does it cost that person that's on ankle monitor per month?
They pay it weekly.
It does, it's a weekly charge, and you know the exact cost of it,
Not the exact cost, no. It's expensive.
it's gone up.
The number of $300 a month is in my brain, that was that right?
At least.
Either three to five, something like that, but then the cost of it is minimal.
Yes, there's a,
I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, but I just.
we get an answer for you right now, we checking this, so we can give you the exact cost of it, what it costs. But we have to buy monitors, we have to keep enough on hand so we can service.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
goes through a vendor.
Yes, sir.
If I remember that meeting that he's referring to, if I remember correctly, this was supposed to be a self-supporting,
Correct.
venture. That it was not gonna cost the county anything. That, you know, you all would make enough to support these monitors.
That's correct. $60 a week is what it costs the,
$240 a month.
$240 a month, so you were pretty close.
Is what it costs the offender?
Yep.
60 a week.
Okay, and that's a fraction of what it costs for the monitor for the vendor. If I remember correctly now. And I know I'm getting into muddy waters with you, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
I'm getting into muddy water with you, and I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I guess I'm a little bit confused of what the actual request is.
I can speak.
The 35, 350, 25,
Because when I read this, I thought this was a request for the monitor.
What is this?
I can tell you, basically what it boils down to is, it's the $35,350. As you remember, last year, they started out asking just for $15,000. Well, since then, since they implemented all those pay increases, now it's up to like $50-something thousand. And they generate roughly around $70,000 a year. So that's why, you know, I've been conversating back and forth with Jennifer about it, that they're basically at their limit of what the money they're bringing in annually, with the $25,000 for the telecommunicators, NCIC, and then the $50,000 that they've got now. This from all these pay increases they've done. So they're asking for, if you take the $50-something thousand and take out like the 15 that they implemented and started with, that's where they get the $35,000. So they're asking for the county to take that on because it's close to that.
Jordan's got something.
I'd like to say on that, the money that we're requesting is not to fund the ankle monitor. Previous administration implemented a pay scale for deputies to retain because they were losing deputies, kind of the same thing that we done at the jail this year. So when that was put in place, that pay scale, those deputies have been retained and their salary goes up yearly. So last year, the pay scale that they put in place, the previous administration, was not funded. So we took money from the ankle monitors, money that was produced from ankle monitors, and we basically funded to keep those deputies. So now that we're going on year 2, those deputies are still here. Their pay scale is in effect for 3 years, 3-year pay scale. We gotta provide them with money again, and the ankle monitor money that we collect is not covered. So.
That makes a lot more sense.
We make roughly $40 a month. If the ankle monitor is being used and they're paying the fee, we make about $40 a month on the ankle monitor. So, per week, $40 per week. I'm sorry, per week, per monitor. So we make money with the ankle monitor.
The 35, if I remember correctly, was the 15, and then plus the 25,000 that y'all already committed for the tax officer. Is that right?
25, that's on top of this.
On top of it.
Yeah, pretty much their total expense right now is around $70,000. There's several different officers that's paid out of there. and then the 25,000, which they're paid in advance, the 25 for this year, because you remember they paid 2 years at one time when we first entered.
They did.
I think basically what it sounds like to me is the previous administration, to give the employees a raise, they took the $35,350 from that fund that is generated from the ankle monitors, and now they're having to continuously, that's out of their current budget. So now they're having to figure out where to come up with that $35,000 this budget.
Yeah, because
So
they're-
really, it's nothing to do with the ankle monitor, they just took the money to give the pay increases from that.
No, not actually, this is money that's, they're having to reimburse the county every month, because they budgeted this much money to be paid out of that department. So we invoice the sheriff's office every month for these salaries of these officers.
That's what I'm saying, so it's extra money that they're,
So just, if that program went away, we would have to make up that much out of general fund, because we wouldn't have the money to cover it.
And I feel sure the administrator yourself had talked about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, me and Jennifer's been sending emails back and forth for several months.
I hate to put y'all two on the spot, but I'm a little uneasy. I need a recommendation from staff.
I mean,
I'm not gonna hold it against you, either one.
Can I add one more thing to that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes, you may, he's not the one chairing the meeting.
I mean, they don't, if
So-
that
so
program
here-
was to go away, they wouldn't have the money, the fund, I mean, they would have to they would have to do pay cuts to these officers. So which is gonna redo what they just done,
The amount we're,
increasing their salary.
sorry, the amount we're requesting, if you guys do the cost of living raise to the county, 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever you guys vote on, I know you continue to table it, that money will be factored into this. So it may not be a total $35,000 once you let us know what our cost of living increase is, because the deputies will not receive a cost of living increase plus their pay scale. They're only gonna get what the pay scale allows. So depending on what you guys do percentage-wise, this number may come down.
But that being said, the sheriff, you do have autonomy on your salary. You can pay them what you want to, as long as it's in your line item, correct?
My understanding.
Yes, sir, my understanding. I'm still waiting.
So from that standpoint, thank you for that, because that does help. And we haven't come up with that cost of living amount of money yet, but we will. So as far as I'm concerned, we can table that part until we decide what the cost of living rate is gonna be for all departments.
That'd be fine, that'll give them time to think about what they wanna say.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh.
We're running out of time.
I've got to send out the pizza.
And the last part of this is request 2 new deputies, $86,000 plus fringe. But Sheriff, I thought I heard you say at the coordinating council meeting that you were fully staffed. Are you not fully staffed?
Yes, ma'am. We are fully
Okay,
staffed.
so these are, I'm assuming, you shouldn't assume, but these are the 2 deputies from MACD that we're referring to here?
Yes, ma'am.
so they're asking for 2 new spots, or 4 new spots.
I think it's the two that y'all were, it's kinda like the same thing with detention center, to make you whole again, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Cause they used 2 slots to get their deputies up their pay, cause they wasn't retaining them, they were leaving.
So with the,
Two deputies, 86.
That was the previous administration did that, so that's why those 2 slots were down. And then we know with the 2 MACD slots, we're gonna lose the funding out of that.
Yep, we're gonna lose that 118. That's for sure.
Yes,
so what kind of, as far as with the chief deputy spot not being filled, is that money still just sitting there?
It is, because he's purposely been holding on to that, because he don't wanna lose those 2 officers. So that's why he's purposely been sitting there holding on to that and not fully, you know, not staffed or hired anybody.
Mhm.
What, it's not completely enough, but that's that's the main reason he has not filled that position, because he knew he was fixing to be faced with that on Mac.
It would fully fund one of them and partially fund the other one, so I don't wanna have to go to two deputies that do a great job and came to work. It just, for the county, and they tell them you don't have a job.
I agree with that.
Pull out of the contract, so.
Maybe I'm confused, so if you get those two deputies from Mac, that essentially brings you 2 extra deputies in. Are you gonna need those 2 extra deputies, or when somebody retires or somebody leaves, you just fill in those slots?
Well, we certainly can, we can use those two and a lot more, I mean, honestly, but yes, my plan, if somebody were to leave today, I wouldn't go hire somebody today. I would use one of those slots from McAfee to fill that slot, and that's the plan.
Okay, so in that case, you would need $86,000, right?
But we don't know anybody's, we don't have any openings right now for those two.
I think what he's saying is, currently we all holding on to that money for that would almost, it wouldn't completely bring 2 officers in, but it could bring, you know, fund one and partial another one. Then if they approve this, then your basically can almost have 4 different slots, is what he's trying to say, I think.
Speak again? Sorry. So this was prepared before we knew about McBee taking a police department. We were originally asking for the 2 deputies that the previous administration used their slots for to fund the pay scale to retain deputies. This is what the original 2 deputies were for that we were asking for, 2 additional 12 to 12 deputies to work the 7-day split shift to give an additional road deputy for the county. And then the McBee thing happened, so. We were gonna take those 2 McBee deputies and put them in those 2 12 slots that we were asking for from the previous administration that they got rid of. Not asking for 4, we're asking for 2.
A lot of them have to include them $400 boots.
Hey, I'm not the chairman of this group, listen.
I'm not really good on that. When you,
I didn't hear you, sorry.
I said, I'm not ready to move forward on that yet. I might get a little more understanding and perhaps sit down with you guys, at some point here shortly, because I feel sure we're gonna have another workshop here in just a little while.
We are. So, what are
If you wanna table, I understand what you're saying, what your needs are for that. I don't see how we're gonna avoid it unless we can find money, unless you force him to hold on to that chief deputy salary and then fund that other 25% of it if it's paid for 1 plus a half. I mean, we can table it and discuss it all at one time. I don't think we're gonna be able to run from that for so long. So I'm good with making it all part of the same conversation we have next time, just for a little more clarity.
Alright, so,
You good with that, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
okay, so we move to table that. The next item is requesting travel training increase of 25,000. You all getting numbers together, I think?
And that, yeah, that's the
I
paperwork.
don't know
it
if you
is.
want to read it.
Alright.
What with that,
Training travel now.
I was gonna say, with that $25,000 increase on top of what the training travel is now, how does that break down per officer per year for training?
That's correct,
So
yes.
that shows the cost of.
So we like to apologize, the last meeting we came to, we were not expecting to have this information, we were going to observe. But, council asked us to get some better numbers put together, so I put them together, I'll be real brief. If you look at the very top where it says original budget, that's 25,000, that's what we're budgeted for every year, that's what we're currently budgeted for. Yearly subscriptions, this is stuff we have to pay to maintain certification for the sheriff and deputies. If we pay the bare minimum, that takes us to $19,460 of our $25,000 budget. our mandatory training that we have to maintain our law enforcement certification for shooting and, secondary weapons in South Carolina. If we do that mandatory training, that leaves us with a budget of $5,291, which, breaks down to about $73.48 per officer, 72 sworn officers. Obviously, it's impossible to send people to additional training with $73. Just their meals alone for a 1 week class would be $125. The second page, it shows some training we would like to implement. If you look at the bottom, very low number is $50,000. We're not asking for that. We're gonna separate these out over a period of a few years, so we may do 1 or 2 of these trainings 1 year, we'll skip the one, do another one the second year, but, I mean, just diversity training and active shooter training is $3,000. That would eliminate the rest of our budget, we would have nothing left, so just to give some additional training it's more than it used to be. $73 per officer will not cover it.
My experience with that is when I was at the sheriff's office, we'd have to split a box of 50 rounds to be able to shoot, and that is just absolutely unacceptable in my opinion. When it comes to training, we need to try our best to look out for training.
Mr. Conklin, may I ask you a question?
Yes,
Ammunition has went out of sight.
through the roof.
Okay, and some of us can't even get it.
Yes.
That's cheap. Can I start ordering mine through you?
This is actually, we prepared this last night. Troy checked through the, state surplus, so that's, we can't get it a little cheaper.
I mean, you were very conservative with those numbers.
Yes, we didn't pad the budget by any means, this is realistic numbers.
Shoot moldy bullets, so you throw them.
No, sir, they're brand new bullets, but they do come from the state procurement project. State procurement and,
Thank you for doing that.
but they have gone up
Like powder
exponentially.
rounds?
We're not back to musket balls yet, but I was amazed at how much the increase was. It's gotten so bad that the vendors have had to go up during the middle of their contracts with the state.
I understand.
I know we've been here for a long, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Me personally, George, would you mind standing up?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm picking at your friend.
Stand on this side. No, I would like to say, I know we've been here for a long time and everybody's ready to go, but I would like to say, I know we're asking for a few things. We're not asking for anything that's over the top. We're asking for the bare minimum, but I would like to go over just 3 line items. There's about 20 of them on here. This is money since we've been in the new administration that we have saved the county, specifically Troy, and that's why he's here today. He's done a lot of work. One line item here alone, we saved $87,000 on purchasing used vehicles. We've done a lot of equipping ourselves. We basically have a full-time shop every day. He comes in early and leaves late. We saved $12,000 on one line item. In 90 days, we've saved $160,256 just by doing a lot of the work that previous administration subbed out to somebody else. So, in total, the cost of training that we're asking to increase $25,000 and $25,000 for equipment for officers, we've already saved $160,000. So I just wanted to
I personally
put that
have
out and tell
no,
Troy. I mean,
no
he's
problem
saved
with
us a lot of money.
training your people. The more training they have, the safer they're going to be and the safer our citizens are going to be. And I personally have no problem with it. It is what it is.
Yes, sir.
And therefore I make the motion that we increase that one line item.
I'll second that.
It's been moved in second that we will increase the training and travel by $25,000. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Moving right along.
And I enjoy my
Thank
driving
you.
privilege, Sheriff.
Who can we shoot the taser next?
Next item, requesting uniform increase of $20,000. Staff reviewed last fiscal year, and at the end of the year, remaining balance was $1,642.34. Sheriff's Department gave staff a list of uniform items, which is enclosed. Cost $3,945 to equip officers, minus items staff knew was on grants, etc. Some of these items will be handed down to new officers if officer leaves, such as guns, tasers, and handcuffs. Staff feels that half the requested increase would be gracious, but will do what committee feels is best for the department. So what does the committee feel is best? Committee?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, may I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How would you feel about half of that? Would that do what you needed to do? Cause I like that number better myself, but that's a number, that's a numbers thing.
Yes.
Can you make it on that?
Can you make it on what the finance director is suggesting?
I'd rather give you more training and less enclosed, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I tell you, I heard a lot of comments about the dress of the deputies. So they say 4 deputies, 4 different uniforms. And my philosophy was, it's not a uniform unless it's uniform. And we worked hard to do that, as you can see. But given, yeah.
These are your numbers, by the way.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I promise you, we not pad numbers to, to try to, we don't have a surplus anywhere. The only money we really have in sheriff's office that we talk about is the ankle monitor money, and we use that for other stuff. Yes, we can, so.
We have reduced the cost, we have changed the uniform, but we've reduced the cost per deputy from over $600 to just over $400.
We've all, actually, this is cheaper than what they had, what they were before.
I like that better than Class A stuff. Looks a little more workable.
So, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just, I mean, my question kinda hadn't really changed. I mean, we want the guys to look professional. We want them to look, we want the appearance that your deputies make to inspire confidence in the people they approach every day. And so, but, I mean, I trust our staff here too, I trust that number $10,000. My question for you is, can you survive on that this year from a uniform standpoint? I mean, because we've got a lot of line items here that do a lot of money. I mean, we can't say yes to every single one of them.
I'd like to say the vest that we have to replace every 5 years is included in that number.
Is it a yes or no though? Can you?
We'll make whatever you give us for it.
Yes, I'll give you asked the question, I'll give, yes.
Yes.
We will have to, we will. We'll cut back somewhere else. We'll make it.
Are there a lot of vests that have to be replaced this year? I know what.
Well, we came in, we found
27.
27 that were out of date.
We replaced 27, we actually have an order right now that is being processed for 25 vests, right now. And we actually have a couple of deputies that said they would hold off, that they would offer to hold off. Like myself, I'm still using the vest that Darlington County bought me. We will more than willing to hold off until and get one of the guys that's on the road. Now, obviously, 7 of those were new hires of that number, but the rest were all replacement with active deputies that were working now.
Is that $700 though, is that our part of it, or is that $350? Cause part of it's paid with the grant, so is it $350 or $700 for the
$350.
part?
It would be $350.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
If we would put it, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due, because he's mine, Mark Wise has put in for $5.4 million worth of grant money for our department for the upcoming year. And if we don't know until after July 1st if we're gonna get the matching funds grant or not.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I got it right, cause I scratched through it and put $350
Right.
instead of $700.
If we get awarded it's called the BJ grant, if we get awarded that again,
Gotcha.
then it would be $350.
Gotcha, but a lot of them, when you come in, were outdated.
Correct.
27 of them.
We had 27 people that either had outdated or no vest at all. And there were several also that are still wearing vests that were not ordered for them. That there were vests that were still in date that came close enough to fitting them, and they haven't got a vest yet.
Madam Chairman, may I, Sheriff, after looking at all this, and you said you would make it, you wanna make it work, but you want all you folks to look professional, okay? You got the job cut out where you would think.
You can't make chicken salad out of chicken.
I'm making a joke. Therefore, I'm gonna make the motion that it's increased to $15,000.
It's been moved and second that we award the sheriff's department $15,000 for uniform increases.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All in
much.
favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Troy, don't you be mad at me.
No, look here, I will make it work.
Okay, the next item is requesting animal control increase total $153,000. We have a lot of money. $153,375, consisting of a regular line item expense increase of $10,000, salary increase of $21,200 to get officers on the same pay scale as deputies. Fringe benefits, of course, a new officer for $59,125, salary and fringe, and a vehicle. Okay?
Madam Chair, if I may, talking about that, our animal control officers are averaging about, 15 calls per day. I kinda thought when I came in, it was sure, it'd be like 15 calls a week, it's 15 calls a day. And so, they're really busy, they're animal control / litter officers. We do very little litter work, I think that the board mentioned litter earlier today. They're supposed to be doing litter complaints too. We're really not getting to the litter complaints right now. It's on the back burner because our calls are so high.
As far as the litter part, not complaints that you receive calls from, but just litter across the county. I heard you say at the phone coordinating council meeting that we would love to get I call them chain gangs, I guess they call them something
Work
else.
camp.
Work camp. If we can get that program started back, then that would help. Maybe not with what they're doing, but it would help with the county, cause that's one thing Jamie Teague was talking about at the mayor's meeting. And it's something that's of concern to all of us.
Yes, it
Hopefully
would
we
definitely,
can-
it would definitely help.
hopefully we can get something worked out there. Questions, concerns, comments?
My question would be, Sheriff, if you guys can increase the animal control, we may have touched on this a little bit last time, to the same pay scale as deputies, and what's your plan for them to do that? Because right now, they don't have the same certifications to them.
No, if we're gonna pay them the same pay as the deputy, they don't have the same certification.
So we're
There'll
gonna
be
take
some
class one
additional
guys and
training
put
for
them
them, yes, sir.
in animal control.
That's correct.
And if we bring on this new individual, that would obviously be the same class one certification.
They would always, the plan is to
Are
offer.
we going to lose them periodically to other tasks and duties and take them out of that vehicle and put them in another one?
Well, we do that now. We do that now. But their primary function is animal control because of just a call light.
Is that working out well right now between your staff and the shelter staff? At one time, we had a overcrowding problem. My understanding now is it's got a lot better.
We're not having a problem.
Not having any problem.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. Matter of fact, I have told the police chiefs in the county, because two of them, the raw and pavement chiefs have said that they had animal issues in their jurisdiction and they called shelter and they said, don't bring your bus, we can't take your animals. I said, you let our animal control officers come in the city and pick the animals up and take them in the shelter. That's not, we do not have a problem. It's been fixed. Good luck, so.
So you're saying you're gonna take a regular deputy, and they're gonna answer litter control and animals, a regular deputy, that's what they're gonna be doing?
Well, that's the plan.
I mean, because
If we get their pay up to what a regular deputy makes, I think they ought to have the same training. They would have the same certification as a regular deputy. And they can do anything then.
They need certification in animal control also.
I'm sorry?
They need certification in animal control. You can't take a deputy, spend all nights and put him out chasing a dog, and he gets in the middle of 15 pit bulls, what's he do?
Where do you get that certification?
Charleston.
I'm not familiar with certification for that. What they get is on the job training. I mean, they learn by.
You can get bit real good on the job.
I can tell you all about that. So,
That's a learning experience.
it is. But what I'm trying to do, Madam Chairman, is every deputy could do every job. That would be the most efficient way for the sheriff's office to work. So if we had like the wood here, but if we had a tornado come through and, tear up a portion of the county, we could put any deputy we got on our payroll out there to do the job.
This all hands on deck situation.
See, right now, our animal control officers, animal/litter control officers are not class 1 deputies.
They can't even write a damn litter ticket.
Boy, they can do that.
Off county orders, not off state orders.
They're class 3 officers, which is a limited specific duty officer. By academy standards, they have to have a limited specific duty, and that's the only place that they can write tickets in. And there's specific guidelines laid out by the Criminal Justice Academy about what a limited specific duty is. One is court security, one is animal control, and one is litter control. And they can write a ticket in that specific area, but only in that specific area. Now, what the sheriff is referring to, and we have an officer going through this right now, Deputy Alex Carnes. He is one of our animal control officers, but he is going through the class 1 training at this time. And when he completes, he will have the same certification as a regular deputy. And it goes to our department, and what the sheriff wants to do as far as everybody being able to wear everybody else's hat if need be. That gives our county residents that we serve one more person in case of an emergency. And if, God forbid, we have a deputy hollering for help, and that's what I worry about the most. I don't really care what certification you have or what vehicle you're in, or if your badge says animal control or deputy. If you are trained in using that weapon and you can come help me, that's what I want you to be able to do. And that's the same with why we're trying to cross-train and get as much training for these guys as we can. It's not, I want to address one thing you said, Ms. Burns, that, about the deputies having to respond to animal complaints. They already do, because after 6 o'clock in the evening, if somebody has an animal complaint, a regular deputy will respond to it. He might not take the actions that animal control will, but he'll start the initial process and be a civil servant to our constituents.
I'm gonna go ahead, I'm sorry.
They'll respond to that call and then start the process. Now, that incident report will be checked on the next day and passed on to our animal control officers. So it is more cross-training throughout our department. We all wear many hats to try to get our job done.
Let me clear something up too. They're not the only officers in the department who are not class 1 officers. A lot of the ones you see working around the courthouse and all are not class 1 officers either. So, I don't want to mislead anyone.
I think on the animal control side, this is just my opinion, I think that a lot of the animal control complaints we get come from municipalities, and I think that it's time to bring to the table that we see about holding the municipalities accountable for the animal complaints with some funding to help out, because it's obvious that they are overran. You can pull the numbers that it is just an astronomical amount of animal complaints. So when we start talking about money coming off of our budget, I think we need to try to pass the burden on to some of the municipalities to try to help out with this stuff.
again, I think it's a good concept, but I know what you're gonna run into, because we've tried it before, where we pay town and county taxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're gonna run into. Mr. Eubanks, didn't you and I discuss a plan for animal litter control a year ago?
We did, there's two things been brought up. What Mr. Ford said, I dare say, when we had animal control, the majority of the calls were in the municipality. The second part of this being bringing the salary up, one thing that frustrated us when we had animal control is, and I think this would help fix this and help it, make it a more uniform, being out there, automatically, if it was an animal call, first thing you hear, call animal control. When it's uniform, I think, and everybody's making the same thing, we felt like, a lot of cases can be defused or handled by, we felt at the time, a deputy. Especially in the middle of the night, I mean, you get a call, you've got 2 animal control officers, you've got 4 or 5 deputies on the shift, animal control officer got to crawl out of the bed, go basically answer a call. A lot of times a deputy could have defused and handled that and put it off till in the morning or whatever. I think that would help them in a lot of ways if everybody was equal, especially pay-wise in that thing. I mean, in that line. That's just 2 things I know in years past that we faced that I don't know if that helped explain anything or.
It does, but then there again, Sheriff, if you've got a vicious dog, you still gonna call that animal control person out. He's on call 24 hours a day.
That's correct, and he has the
If
equipment.
he cannot handle it,
That's right.
Right.
he will be called out.
He has a special vehicle for putting the dog in
That's
and
correct.
stuff like that. And we had an issue with a deputy with one in his car, and worked out fine until they got the shelter, the dog didn't want to come out the car. So, anyway, and Ms. Burns, to answer your question, any one of our people can answer this call. He and I answered one a couple of weeks ago.
And I think the
Bob was
town,
tied up, so he and I answered, we went on animal call.
the town of Sherrall, correct me, they have their own animal control officer, but they come and they drop their animals off at our shelter.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And so, but we're having to do that service, we're having to do dual service on all the other municipalities. And I get the concept of people saying, hey, we're already paying taxes too. Well, where's the funding coming from for your police departments and everything else? You're paying double for that, too. But, at some point we got to kind of say, hey, we got to have some help with funding.
And can I say something a little off topic here, but since the jail does come under sheriff's office? I would like to ask y'all to look at what we charge the municipalities to keep their prisoners. It's not what it costs us to keep prisoners.
No, that's all.
We're like,
That's all.
okay, I'm sorry.
That's neat.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And we're gonna run in about the same crap.
You're gonna hear the same argument.
Yep.
We pay
I've already heard it.
taxes, so-
I've already heard it.
So what's the pleasure of the committee?
Michelle won't look at me, so.
Let me ask you this, can I make a motion for us to table this, if for no other reason, just that one line for me to sleep on? I got some problems with it that I'm struggling with from being the devil's advocate. I would like the opportunity to sit down with Sheriff Stringer and discuss it with him a little bit deeper, but just one-on-one, and give him a chance to convince me about a couple things, because I don't think it's preposterous by any stretch, but I just, it's a lot of money, and I struggle with the dollar amount, honestly. I just do. So I'd like to make that motion if it's accepted. We just take it to further discussion. I'm sorry to know.
Tabling the whole thing or just the salary part?
Just the whole line item for requesting animal control agent, that whole thing.
That don't mean that's the end of it, Sheriff. But now,
I'll be glad to give it back to the county.
I know you will.
That's not what it is.
I don't think two of us can meet with, because that'd be a quorum, we'd have to meet one-on-one. Sure. I mean, I'd love to go, we wouldn't have to do this deal twice, but that's not the way it's gonna be. Okay. All right, moving right along.
Thank you. That is the next item. Decision needs to be made as the county on the sheriff's request to charge towns for animal control pickup. Do we need to do that?
I'm good. So I, we make a motion, we'll discuss it.
What is your charge?
Yeah, that's what would be your recommendation? You're recommending that we charge the towns for animal control pickup, how much would you think? Do you have a?
Are we talking about picking up an animal and us taking them to our shelter?
Yes.
So, I have no idea what it costs if the shelter that they come under us, I don't have no idea what it costs them to house them.
But it's pennies a day compared to what it costs to house a prison. That's for sure. What you've got to consider is your man, gasoline, vehicle, all that stuff going to pick up those animals from municipality.
Do you wanna try to come up with a cost on your end, you know, what it would cost you and get back with us?
We can do that and come as close as we can.
I mean, it'd be the best guess.
Alright, so if you get us some numbers on that.
Yes, ma'am.
If we-
Numbers guy, so we can.
Well, we're giving your man a lot to do.
$55,000 for one officer would be pretty close.
Couple $100 a dog, $100 a catch.
I'll get something to
Okay.
If I had read a little bit longer, a little bit further, excuse me, it says, in regards to increasing towns fee to house their inmates at jail up to around $50, sheriff is gonna check with other sheriffs in the state and see what they charge. Did I go from animal control to jail?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is relative to the jail and housing, other.
I mean, there it is.
It says
Municipality inmate,
administrator and
correct?
staff spoke with sheriff in regards to increasing the town's fee to house their inmates at the county's jail up to around $50. Sheriff is going to check with other sheriffs in the state and see what they charge. Administrator also spoke with sheriff and he's okay with broadening the federal inmates program, which we've already discussed that. But back to housing prisoners from.
What I found out, talking to some of my counterparts, they charge the same amount that it costs them to house the inmates. And everyone's prices are going to be different. Of course, that's, to be expected. But I don't think we ought to charge any less than what it cost us, what it costs Chesterfield County to house an inmate. And right now, I think we're charging
$20.
$20 a half.
25 or 20. And it costing us $65, we charging it on the thing.
I'm going
Good
to
deal.
papers up to you, Tim, you have them somewhere, for what Lexington charges their inmates, so we got that, we've got an idea.
So what does it cost us? $55?
About 55.
Yeah.
Why don't we double the fee to $50, just like you asking for here?
I'm good with that.
And I'll just, and we're gonna take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can justify this. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
just my opinion, but you know,
Straight line on cost.
at some point, we got to cost share in what we're doing.
Yeah, because there's a
Keep trying to
tremendous
get it.
amount, there's a tremendous amount of need, not only in the sheriff's department, everywhere else. While everybody wants to certainly help out and meet the needs of all these departments, folks, this money got to come from somewhere. And we don't have an oil well,
No.
so, you know.
I will say this too about the inmates. we transport the inmates, no matter where they come from. They can come from a city or they can live out the county. They're in our jail, when they get sentenced, and they go into a state facility, we transport them. They fall down and hit their head at the jail and have to go to the hospital, we sit on them.
They're inmates.
It makes no difference, we sit on them.
He is under the sheriff's control at that time.
We sit on them, so,
They decide to sue, they decide to sue you and the county.
got one yesterday, it was Mr. Ruffin.
Yes, sir. That was,
Got
that
one
happened to
yesterday.
be an inmate that came from another, I won't name the municipality, but that inmate came here from a municipality.
That's correct, and I was not the sheriff when he came here, but Troy Ellerby was not the detention center director, but we're named in the lawsuit. Here comes with the job. But yeah, we do, we take care of these inmates. It costs them nothing once they put them in our jail, so. I think charging them more is not out of line here, I really don't.
So you used to look for our name tags for lawsuits.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, he was in on
Yes, sir.
I live in a municipality. I don't want the charge for them to go so high that I get hit on my taxes or anything else. But the bottom line was I was set here to help manage the county dollars. And with a clear conscience, I mean, that's what I've gotta do. And for me, if our cost is $55 a day, I don't see, we're already losing every time you have to touch them and transport them or do anything else. But the actual bare bones cost, if we have that figured out at $55 a day, I don't see why we don't pass that on. That is not us making money, that is us covering the bare bones minimum of what it costs to house that.
Just to pass through.
It's just, that there's no profit here for us. Somebody might be making money off of it, but it's not the county. And again, I don't want my municipality taxes or charges or fees to go up, but that's not why I'm sitting in this seat.
That's
So I would make a motion to just pass that cost on to the municipality at
It's-
$55.
It's gonna come, it's gonna come either way.
Yeah, if you're gonna get complained at, go ahead and get complained at, the right amount.
My phone's gonna ring off the hook, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna get one.
Is there any
Sheriff, if you're going up over.
I was asking for discussion.
So sorry, man.
Any discussion? The motion is to increase the fee by $55. Moved in second. No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. You had a question?
And you scared me so bad, I forgot what it was. Never mind.
it. Tap water decaf.
Oh, you scared me.
That's why I'm over here.
Okay.
We all tired of it.
Yes, we are. Okay, telecommunications. We just ignore that about cost of living raise. They're requesting 2 new dispatcher slots. A $56,864 salary increase and fringe. Decision needs to be made if county is going to charge MACD for their dispatch calls due to the increase of traffic calls, etc. Our dispatch team is going to be incurring. So now we're on the
So the
dispatcher.
two new slots will mainly cover the cost of.
This is where you was talking about touching on earlier, and I said, this is coming up with 2 slots that they're asking for. Y'all told us to, kind of put our heads together and see how we would come about that. Along with the sheriff already paying $25,000, basically for that same service that he's doing. That being the case, Ms. Stanley and I will sit down and talk. Naturally, when you're giving the department employees, the department's gonna benefit the most out of everybody. So that being the county, we broke it down into 4 different categories that's gonna benefit from this. That being the county, the sheriff's department, MACB, and the town of Chesterfield, who is under the same thing as the town of MACB is going under. County benefit the most, they cover 50%. Sheriff's already doing $25,000, we're basing it on a $100,000 position here with the 2 positions. Sheriff already doing 25%, McBee and Chesterfield split the difference with the remainder 25, which would be 12,500 apiece.
Basically $1,000 a month for dispatch service.
That's how Ms. Stanley and I kind of broke it down to how we felt like it would benefit, you know, or affect the county.
Mr. Eli,
Yes, sir.
can I? This might help you understand what you're paying for, what we're paying for. We pay $25,000 to 911 center. The law states you have to have somebody monitoring 24/7. We arrest somebody, put them in our jail, they enter them in the computer, and they're locked up. Let's say that, Charlotte, they created a crime in Charlotte, it comes up on the computer that they've been arrested in Chesterfield County, and Charlotte says, well, we got warrants on him for murder. And they notify us, well, somebody's gotta see that. They may put a 10-minute hit on it, where we got 10 minutes to respond to it. If somebody's not sitting at a computer terminal 24/7 looking for this stuff, that's what we're paying for. And so you can kind of equate it to, what would it cost Payton to hire another officer to sit at the computer all night long? They probably got somebody during the day to it. You know, what's it gonna cost them to pay somebody to sit at a computer terminal around the clock to do this? So, it would be pretty expensive if it would cost us more than $25,000 to hire somebody to sit in the sheriff's office all night long and look at the computer terminal, where they got dispatchers sitting there all night long while they're doing it.
Now, this TAC officer, is that about like NCIC, what we used to do back in the day?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
See, I see.
They don't have a teletype anymore, you got a computer.
They're doing all our computer.
Okay. What is your suggestion?
Cause there's no doubt, I feel like that department is gonna take a hit with, you know, with the town of McBee, you know, going online themselves too. I feel like that's a fair breakdown of that. Also, from the last meeting, after y'all told me, the word got out to the towns, I was receiving calls, you know, they're not in favor of them being charged for this, cause they feel like, kinda like Mr. Smallwood said, you know, they already paying town taxes and all that. And they said already, they're getting hit with additional water bills and stuff like that, just like I brought up earlier. So, I know the towns are struggling, but still.
So are all of them.
So are we.
Yeah, my water bill went up, I mean, you know?
So, I feel like that's a fair breakdown of those two slots that's being requested.
Take baby steps. Get in there.
Big brother can't do it all.
Everything's gone up, everything,
Yeah.
no matter what it is.
And believe it or not, taxes are gonna go up. I'm sorry to say, but I don't see no other way around it. Just exactly what it's gonna be, we'll have to get through these totals, but, if I'm understanding you correctly, you wanna move forward with splitting the fees. Alright, that's 12 and a half, and you pay them.
25, and the county pays 50.
So we're talking two slots.
2 slots.
And that would fund that, you hoping that's gonna fund this position?
That's correct.
Okay.
$56,864 for food and $400 in fringe.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Committee members?
Sir?
I don't know how to run from it.
Well, you can't unless you want to raise taxes even more. We got three other non-committee members here. I'd like to know how y'all feel.
I went through this where I grew up, and we had to do baby steps. We had villages, towns, and cities, all in the county, and everybody paid taxes. And they all complained about it throughout the years. Now it's one of the highest taxed areas in New York State, and they're still living there. But eventually, we have to increase our tax base. We're the lowest taxed county in the entire state. You know, so.
We are one of the lowest, you're right.
We are the lowest.
We are the lowest.
Yes, go to taxrates.org. We are the lowest in the state.
Might be the reason we don't have no damn money.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the consensus?
I take along with the administrator's recommendation. I'll make a motion, don't take the whooping.
So it's been moved and seconded that we, award the 2 slots for the dispatchers at a cost of about $100,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. On to the next page, Veterans Affairs. We just skip voter registration, requesting $4,000 increase, election expense. Staff spoke with the director and he stated his contract pricing had increased. Did it increase by the $4,000? Is that approximately what the increase was?
The voter registration.
Yeah, I spoke, come up for the $4,000. Yeah, I spoke with him and he stated that his contract had been increased and he needed that to be increased to cover that.
So this is one of these we don't have a choice.
Another unfunded mandate.
I don't think we got a choice. You make a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Moved and properly second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Building codes. Okay, so this is requesting increase of salaries of the office manager, about $5,000, a little over $5,000. And permit tech increase of a little over $5,000. And another codes officer from 40 to 45,000. We'll talk about that one first.
If they're basing the request for the new codes officer off the growth in Pageland, which I think they are, I'm a little bit leery of that because I'm very familiar with the market right now. And I know that I had a meeting last week with one of the developers on the 700 homes, and as of right now, that is not going through. So I'm a little bit leery of that it's going to be really, really needed right now. Now that could change, you know, if interest rates change and the market changes, but the housing market and new construction has decreased tremendously.
I think he's spot on as far as the interest rates, and that it's slowed it down. A lot of them has cut down. I don't think you're gonna see near the growth that you had. Money from the code department will have to come from this solar out there. And if we get that, then we can always do supplemental appropriations to hire somebody, correct?
Demand rises high enough, is that what you're saying?
Sure.
If the demand for another officer rises high,
We can do supplemental appropriations to do it then. So we just take that for information. Cause if we're not going to pick and choose on who gets what salary increases, we're gonna treat them all the same.
So we take this as information. All right, so we're down to other entity requests, solicitors, 4th Judicial Circuit. We just got some information at the beginning of our meeting about the solicitor's office and, investigated how that could benefit Chesterfield County, so what is your pleasure on the solicitor's office?
I still like to see the numbers we were talking about last time, as far as what we've accomplished over the last 5 years. I don't know if we ever were able to get any of that information.
We have not, I know of.
I'd still like to see that. I would like to explore a little bit of what Mr. Page was talking about. I think that may be a valuable option for us. I think all that affects what we're looking at in those next 2 paragraphs.
Well, I'm a show me kind of guy. You show me what you can do, and then you'll get rewarded for it. I mean, if we put good money after bad and don't get positive result, then we're out. So, and like I said, we're gonna have a new solicitor in town, there's no question about that. We can get through this fiscal year, I think what they have, we've been doing it, I say continue to do it until we see some positive results.
How many months is it before we get a new solicitor? That won't come up to
January 2025.
Yeah, so we got 2.5 or less than a year and a half or so before we can see any change there.
And there again, you can be talking about take it up again next budget. I don't like, for lack of a better term, the pay to play scenario. I'm sorry, call it what you want, that's what I got. So I just assume bite the bullet and suck it up. I say we take it for information, Madam Chairman.
I'd like to look a little deeper before we make any decisions over that departmental request. Take this information now and let's investigate further what Chris Page is doing. Because that could change the numbers. I mean, that position, I think, would be beneficial to us and would be a lot less than $234,000. Now, will it make as much impact? I don't know. Again, I don't know where we are versus 5 years ago yet.
Okay, so I'm gonna consider that a motion to pay.
Yes, ma'am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the same thing for the public defender.
Yes, ma'am. This time,
All right, is there?
there is other business, but I've got other things, matters I've got to attend to.
Well, that completes the departmental request. So the only other thing we have is the portrait, and I will take a motion to move that to the next meeting.
Okay.
And our next meeting. So I think we need to schedule one, excuse me, later this month. So, I was looking at my calendar, question. We have a couple things we're waiting to come in and give us a little more time to gather more information, but how is the 23rd of May? That's a Tuesday, the 23rd of May. Is that available?
As far as I know.
Okay, 9 o'clock? Good?
Yes, ma'am.
Gonna wake me up?
No.
Okay.
And Susie, if you'll make a note and just send Doug a reminder. So this is May the 23rd at 9. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.